Okay. So, why were you named Earl?
I was named Earl actually after my father, Earl, who was named after his uncle, Earl, my grandfather's brother. So I was named Earl, and I wanted to name Skippy Earl, but he didn't like the name Earl, so we had to change it to Eric.
Eric, yeah.
But he's still E-S-H, Earl Stewart Hyler.
Yeah.
Eric Stewart Hyler.
And Ethan Stewart Hyler.
And Ethan Stewart Hyler.
Yeah, keep the first letter. So, and your father's named Earl after his uncle. It was
That's right,
Earl Lister Hyler, right? Or Earl Filer Hyler.
Earl what?
Filer Hyler, right?
Yes, Earl Filer Hyler.
That's right. That's right. And they're buried all in Thomaston, I think.
They were all buried in Thomaston, yes. My uncle, aunt and uncle, and my grandparents and so on. A lot of other Hylers are in there too. So.
So, how long have you been coming to Millinocket?
About 75 years.
75 years?
6 years, yeah.
Yeah, so your whole life, pretty much?
What's that?
Your whole life, pretty much?
Yeah, literally, because I think my mother brought me up here. I was born in 1935, and I think I came up as an infant at that time, and I've been coming up pretty much every year since then.
Do you know how long they've been meeting up here before that?
Before I was born?
Uh-huh.
Well, my family, they're all gone now, but they've been up here for a long time. They worked in the mill and cut, and his father-in-law worked on the, we used to call it Bangor and Aroostook Railroad. It's now something else, M&M I guess it is. Maine and Montreal.
Maine and Montreal.
Not the candy.
So what would you like to do when you were a child up here?
Well, if I retire up here?
Well, when you were a child up here, what would you do?
Oh, a child up here. Oh, Lord. Actually, I had two places. I had my grandmother's house down in Derby and my Phyllis and so on up here. We swam a lot and ran around a lot. And we used, in Derby, we used to go down and build forts in the woods and rafts and sail down the river.
Oh yeah.
We played a lot of Army games and things like that.
So who lived in Derby?
I visited Derby. I never lived there.
Well, who lived there?
My grandparents.
Which grandparents?
Wilbur and Jesse.
Wilbur and Jesse lived in Derby?
My grandfather worked on the Bangor and Aroostook Road also for about 46 years. And he was well, he had many jobs, but he got up to be a conductor, which is like a foreman on the road. He used to take what they call number one from Bangor, Maine. Was it, what junction is it down there? Bangor, anyway, from Bangor up to, I think it was Van Buren, Maine, and then Quebec. And during the war, as an anecdote, we had rationing and you couldn't get meat in the United States, just a little bit. But Canada had no rationing. So when my grandfather took the train up to Canada, he'd just walk across the border and buy all the meats he wanted. So he had plenty of steaks and hamburger and ham and everything else. So when he came down through Derby, the railroad tracks were probably a couple hundred yards, not even that, maybe 100 yards from the house. So he was standing, I could see him today, standing out in the back thing on the train. He'd throw a package of meat out and I'd run out and pick it up and brought it back. Illegal as all hell, but we had plenty of meat during the war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So your grandfather worked for the railroad.
Is what?
Your grandfather worked for the railroad.
He worked for the railroad for, I think, 46 years.
46 years. And there was somebody else that worked for the railroad.
And well, actually I had several, Cut worked for the railroad. He was the yard master here in Millinocket. And his wife's father worked for the railroad also. He was also a yard master here in Millinocket. At that time, they had it was a very busy place because they didn't have any Route 95. There's all these little small roads, so they used the railroads to get goods in and out. It's not as busy now, but it used to be very busy.
When did the mill close in Millinocket?
When did the mill close? Well, there's actually two mills. One is still running in East Millinocket. One up here in Millinocket closed a few years ago. What 10, maybe 10? Yeah, like that. And they're using that space to try to get an industrial park in. But the mill will never open again up here.
Yeah, I think I saw it when I was driving up here.
What's that?
I think I saw what was the mill.
Yeah. Well, the one going through East Millinocket is still running.
Oh, okay.
But much smaller than it used to be, but it's still making paper.
Mm-hmm.
This mill up here used to make telephone paper for all over the world, and they used to, in Australia and all over the places.
Yeah. I saw a video once about Millinocket and how this town was thriving because of the lumber.
It was back a few years ago. This really was a hot town. There's a story, and it's true, that you go to Stearns High School down there, and in June they have their graduation, and as soon as they get their diploma in their hand, the boys would run in dead heat right down to the mill to sign up at what they call the window. And if you signed up before somebody else, then you had the seniority on there. So they're trying to get the seniority, and if your name was Adam, you're in pretty good shape. But if you're Zachariah, you weren't in good shape.
Yeah.
That's it. And it was an instant job for these kids up here. Millinocket back in the 50s and 60s and 70s was really a swinging town.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, one industry town, and they should close, and it's a problem.
Mm-hmm. But you grew up in Portland.
I grew up in Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a city boy.
And you still meet up with your high school friends to go play cards.
Well, we started playing cards. The group, we had a little rat pack, and we were playing cards ever since about 1950, maybe even 49. I don't know the exact date, but we got up to this very day.
Yeah. How often do you come up here to play cards with your buddies?
Well, not as much as I want to. I might make it once a year now, but before I used to make it 3 or 4 times a year.
Yeah.
But with your grandmother's situation, I can't get away as much as I used to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So how did you meet my Janet, my grandma?
I worked summers in a lumber yard. And one night I was working overtime, because if you'd work 3 hours from, I think it was from 6 to 9 or something like that. And I was unloading a truck. And I was climbing way up at the top of the truck. And I think it was shingles or something like that they were bringing in. And this car drove in. And I looked down, and all I could see is two beautiful legs. Nothing else. My old Earl had to check this one out, so I climbed off the truck. And I kind of looked at it, and there was a very attractive young lady there. And her father was working at the mill. So I never said anything to her, but I spoke to her father. And I said, "Can I date your daughter?" And he said, "Sure." So I started dating her. And that was in August of 1956. And we were married the following June 22nd. So that's how I met her, at the lumber yard.
Can you tell me about the children you had with Janet?
Well, we had 2 twin daughters that died. I don't know if you knew that. They died when they were about 6 or 7 months old. And then we had Susan, and then we had Karen, and then Eric, Skip.
What were the twins' names?
Lisa and Linda.
Lisa and Linda? And they were buried in
South Portland.
In South Portland.
There's a Catholic cemetery. They were born in the Catholic hospital. And one lived about 2 hours and one lived about 4 hours. So they were baptized actually in the Catholic Church, and they baptized them right there. And the Catholic Church made all the arrangements and put these infant kids in the cemetery in South Portland. So,
were they born premature? Is that why they didn't?
Yeah, they were born too soon.
Okay.
Today they would have lived, but back in the 1950s they didn't have the same medicine and experience and so on with it. So, but they would have lived today.
Lisa and Linda. I never knew their names, but I knew
Lisa, Linda.
So okay. So how was my mother when she was a child? What kind of child was she?
Your mother was extremely. How can I put that? A quiet child. And she was a little lady, and she'd always sit with her legs crossed like this, even when she was a small kid like this, and always did as she was told. And she had when we would go to church and we should forget her or something, leave her there, she'd stand right in the same spot, and I'd say, "Never move." She'd be there for hours if necessary. And she was very, somewhat shy on that. But she was a delightful child. And then we had Karen.
Scared of something else?
Oh, God. Yeah, she was a holy terror, that girl. It's kind of funny. It was I took Susan to school for the very first day in kindergarten, and the school was right near us. So I took her by the hand and I walked over to school. And Karen came out of the house, took every stitch of clothes off. She was stark, bollocky, naked, and ran across town to the school. So that's typical of what she was.